Hello and welcome to the pre-first round edition of the CBB Super Show. I am your host, Walt Waddell, aka Dub Deuce 85, the niche sports connoisseur. And after last night's marathon bracket breakdown show with my guy Adam, it was a late night for us. We have a special guest, as you can see here, my man Mike Cutri, don't call him Cutri, on the show with us tonight. We are on 2 hours earlier than normal. Had to make some special accommodations, roll out the red carpet, because I am very excited to have you as a co-host, Mike. It's amazing how fast this season has gone. It's a little bittersweet in that regard, but I'm extremely excited for tomorrow, and I'm very, very happy to talk some drop coverage action with you tonight, my good sir. How are you? It's been a while. Very happy to be on the show with you tonight.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Well, wait, I got to do one thing before we start. Finally, Mike Cutri has come back to the CBB Super Show.
Let's go. Let's go.
I'm back, baby. I'm so happy to see you, Walt. I missed you, man. Let's talk some hoops. Let's break these games down. It's the best time of the year. Let's do it.
Hell yeah. And I was very proud. I have an extremely hard last name. It's Waddell. Growing up, everyone else misspelled it, missaid it as Waddle. So I wanted to make sure that you had told me how to say your last name. I had to look it up, and I was like, I'm not saying it wrong. I haven't had him on for a long time. I want him to come back. So let's do this right. So yeah, I'm 16-game slate, insane. We love it. Lots of great contests across DraftKings. I did have to complain a little bit because there was no Survivor posted, which is kind of lame. I was worried about that. But there's a 10K to first, 222, 25K to first at the $20 level, 3K to first at the $44 level. The $5 is a 2K to first. There's finally all these opportunities at some great prize pools. There's Mania happening. Just all kinds of goodness, props, best bets, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. For those of you who are new to the show, thank you. Welcome. We appreciate it. What we do here is go game by game, the tried and true method of breaking down a slate. We have 16 of them here tonight that we're going to go through, and we'll just go in order, starting from the 12-15 game from left to right as it is appearing on DraftKings. May share my screen here while we're talking and show a little bit of early projections, but for the most part, we're just going to chop it up about the games, and maybe at the end we can pick your brain a little bit for maybe a prop pick or two. So let's just get right into it. Also, those of you who are returning viewers, I do appreciate that as well. You guys have been doing a great job. Social currency, likes, reposts, retweets, interactions, questions, comments, concerns, all of that is a tremendous help, and you guys have been doing a great job with that, which we do really appreciate it. So let's get right into it. We got the 16 gamer that we're going to talk about. The first game on tap. So an 8-9 matchup. A little bit of a coin flip here, as 8-9 matchups tend to be. We're talking about the TCU versus Ohio State game taking place in the East region. The winner getting the right to face Duke if they can get past Sienna. Why don't you kick us off here and talk a little bit about what you're seeing with the Ohio State TCU game? Because this is a tough one for me to pick. I'm still not quite sure where I want to go. Kind of lean TCU, but where are you at with this one from a DFS perspective and overall?
Yeah, it's a really cool game to start the day. I'm kind of really happy that the committee paired these two off because it's an interesting matchup, X's and O's wise. So you look at TCU first. Well, let's first say the total of this game is 146.5, with Ohio State now at a 2.5 point favorite. And looking at the TCU defensive scheme first, they're really like a light version of Houston. Right. So the way Jamie Dixon structured their defense this year is they aggressively hedge ball screens and they double the post. Kind of like what you see Samson do in Houston. Obviously not as good, but it still causes a lot of problems for a lot of teams that aren't used to it. Obviously, not many teams do that in the Big Ten, so Ohio State hasn't seen it too much. maybe a little bit in their last game against Iowa, but the Big Ten doesn't really have those aggressive defensive schemes. So I think it's going to throw them off a little bit. And where's Ohio State's offense come directly from? It's a lot of Bruce Thornton with the ball in his hands. So what Jamie Dixon is going to do is try to get the ball out of his hands with that aggressive hard hedge. So it's going to be interesting to see what Diebler does offensively. I have seen him sometimes this year, even in that last Iowa game they had in the Big Ten tournament, is bring Thornton off the ball and see if they can get him going with some off-ball screening action, move the ball into Junie Mobley's hands. So it's kind of going to be a X's and O's schematic, interesting matchup here to see how Diebler handles the aggressive TCU defense. But whoever's not going to be on the ball is going to be way more a better play DFS-wise than whoever's going to be on the ball. So you have to think that Thornton's going to be on the ball and Mobley's going to be off the ball. So, Mobley's probably the better DFS play if you do like somebody in this game. And then defensively, Ohio State has struggled in the paint this year. And TCU does have some dudes inside with David Punch and Xavier Edmonds. So, I like those guys too. But I think both teams are going to struggle a little bit offensively here. Again, it's the first game of the Thursday marathon at tip-off 12:15. So you may see a little sleepy start here. I do think that 146.5 is a little high. I'm going to have a play on the under for sure, especially the way that TCU can kind of muck this game up and get the ball out of Ohio State's best player. So from a fantasy perspective, I don't love anybody in this game. Again, it's a 16-game slate, so there's going to be way better options in this game, especially to start. But I would have a little bit of interest in Mobley if I really think that Thornton's going to be on the ball, and a lot of ball movement against this TCU defense can find them susceptible. Mobley can get some threes off. And then if I want to go a little bit contrarian, there could be some pathway for a big Punch or Edmonds day as well.
Yeah, I like the call out on the under there, especially the first half under, which is sitting around 66.5 on DK. There's been a lot of chatter lately. I've been watching a lot more SGPN. There's some quality programming on there, and they're real big proponents of betting every first half under. I don't know that I'll go that far, but this is definitely one that stuck out to me, especially these early games. We tend to see, it takes a little bit of time to get the nerves out, and especially being the first game with the first two teams, everybody's watching at the start. There's a little bit of nerves involved there. Like the guard play here, I think Ohio State has a clear advantage there. As far as the front court goes, yeah, Christoph Tilly, I mean, he's sizable, injury prone galore. I think that the TCU front court, maybe in one of the turbo slates, they've got the 4-game early turbo the afternoon. Maybe this is where you get some exposure to this game. I really like Xavier Edmonds. Price wise, only 7.2 compared to David Punch at 8.1. This is the main issue I am a little concerned with there, and more so with Edmonds than I am Punch is potential foul issues. They do draw a high number of fouls that they got driving to the lane with Bruce Thornton and them. So there's been some issues there with Edmonds, and he has legitimate 40 fantasy point upside, but 2 of his last 3 has been under 20 because of foul issues. And that was against the likes of Kansas and Cincinnati, a little bit different than Ohio State. But yeah, I don't want to get too heavily involved in this one, but it is a definitely an intriguing matchup. And I actually think if TCU can get through here, I won't bog you down with future matchups, but if they can get through, I do like them to give Duke a little bit of a competitive game. So we'll see how that works out. All right, we'll move on to the next one here. Troy versus Nebraska. The 4-seeded Nebraska taking on the 13-seeded Troy Trojans. We did get the news here earlier, and I was pretty certain that we would. So no surprise here that Theo Sang will be back for Troy. Let me get my screen pulled up. He's missed the last approximately half month of the season. Price there at 4.7. Interesting value piece coming right in off of the injury there. I do think they're live to cover here and possibly win. It's a 12.5 point spread currently on on DK. It's a total of 137.5 as well. Probably not touching that one, but I do foresee it being a little bit of a low scoring game, which may favor Nebraska a little bit more, because if it ends up being higher scoring, Troy's hitting threes, I think that's where the upset comes into play. Now, of all the 13-4 matchups, I'm a little disappointed with them. I love Cal Baptist. I love, some of these individual 13 seeds, but I don't like the draws that they got necessarily. Out of all of them, I do think that Troy may have an opportunity here to pull the upset. And if I think that, then there's some opportunities here for us, because most of their guys are fairly cheap. outside of Thomas Dowd, who's priced at 8.4, probably not paying that tag for him, but he does have legitimate slate breaking upside. If they push Nebraska, this goes into overtime. He's going to be a catalyst for that. A lot of people looking to last year's tournament, writing this team off, and especially Dowd, who had a terrible game, but he's a completely different player this year. They have that experience, and I think that having Sang back is just a huge lift for them overall. Troy's also been guilty of playing down to their opponents, and the weaker Sun Belt opponents, they really look pretty soft. And then in the non-con against upper tier competition, which I don't know if we can call it USC upper tier competition, but they looked really good in those spots. So definitely some interest here. You've got some relatively nice prices, guys like Jarrell Bellamy at 4.9, Kobe Campbell at 4.4, although with Sang back, that's going to eat into some of those minutes. And as far as the Nebraska side goes, I always love Braden Frager. He can fill it up in a hurry. He's priced there at 4.7. I don't know that we can use him in a mania situation or a main lineup just because the minutes are a bit sporadic there. Needs a little bit of foul trouble, or if Troy can press, Nebraska into a little bit of a panic, not press literally, but, make them panicky, hitting shots, they'll need Frager's offense. If he gets into that 30-minute range, he's an absolute slam dunk at 4.7, but he was hovering around that 18 to 22 margin, then it's not quite the level that we're going to need. He has been pretty down the last 3 games, but he's played under 25 minutes in those as well. 2 of those 3 have been losses, and they were not close losses. They got their doors blown off against UCLA, the Donovan Dent game, and then they had a really rough outing against Purdue in the conference tournament there. So another game that I'm probably going to be relatively light on. Do you think there's any merit to a Troy upset here? And with Sang back in the equation here, are you kind of off of anyone in this game, or what are you thinking here?
Well, I first have to mention the legend, Mike Randall, Scott Cross covers.
Yeah.
He does. And I do think this is a very coverable game, let's say, for Troy. I will first say that in the current college basketball landscape, I think the era of Cinderellas is just dead. With NIL and transfer portals, I mean, that's the skill gap between these mid-low majors and these Power 5 teams is just the highest it's ever been. I mean, you look at the KenPom metrics, and we have 4 of the best statistically powerhouse teams of all time. And it's just a function of these guys just keeps transferring. Like, these low mid-major schools lose all their great players, so we're not really going to see them have the talent enough to carry a Cinderella run. They need so many things to go right. I will say, though, Walt, that out of all of the 5-12, 14, 3-14 matchups, I do think Troy has the best chance to pull that upset. But they need a lot of things to go right. So this Troy team, all they want to do is shoot threes or get to the rim, right? They're 7th nationally in rim and 3 rate. If you look at the Nebraska defense, what does the Nebraska defense do? They completely take away the rim. They're 2nd nationally in rim denial. So that means Troy is not going to be able to get to the rim. So what they're going to do, they're going to chuck a lot of threes. So this is going to be a very high variant game. I do think that Troy has some size, and their defense is actually pretty good. They switch a lot. And Nebraska is not really the greatest team to mismatch hunt and exploit those switches. They're more like a lot of off-ball movement. So, the Troy is a very disciplined, well-coached team. So I think they can defend and muck this game up a little bit. So if they do get hot, they have the opportunity to pull up this upset. But they have to shoot really well. They probably have to shoot 40% from 3 at least. But, it's not a bad matchup for Troy. It kind of reminds me of that Arizona 2-15 matchup against Princeton a few years ago, where Princeton got really hot and beat them. Maybe that was 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. It kind of reminds me of that matchup a little bit. From a DFS perspective, I do think this is going to be more of the uglier games on the slate, so I'm probably going to stay away. One guy I do really like, just because he's so cheap, is Rank Mask. Man, I just love that guy's game so much. And if they're switching a lot, he could have a mismatch where he could take advantage of a little bit. So I have some interest in Mask, especially as on the slate, we'll realize that the forward spot isn't really great. It's much more of a guard-heavy slate. So I'm looking at Mask there. And then, like you said, if you want some value on the Troy side, if you do think they're going to hit a lot of threes, like Kobe Campbell at 4,400, it's a pretty decent option there.
Yeah, I'm not as weird about it. I used to be the, very staunch late game hammer and all these things, and I don't worry about that. I've had some character growth, but I also just this with a long all day slate like this, there really is an edge to holding out longer for PMR, especially in single entry head to head stuff. So I don't want to get too involved, but Campbell at 4,400. If this was like a later in the day game, some PMR burned, I think I'd be more apt to use him. Just a little bit of nervous of burning a spot. The prices on this slate, they've done a good job on some players. They did a horrible job on others. It's not as bad as some of the slates we had during conference tournament week. And Mass is a nice call out. He's been kind of banged up, and then Sanford's had some ridiculous games. Sam Hoiberg, has become way more lethal than I ever thought he would be. And offensively, there's just been a lot of other guys have stepped up, and it's really kind of cut into his production, right? I think it's the cheapest that he's been pretty much all season. And since he had that triple-double way early, I think that was against FIU to start the season, he's had a few blow-up games here or there, but yeah, he's been really just kind of, 20, 22 fantasy points, but we're getting a price now where it's very noticeable. I don't think people will really look to him. He's had enough down games now too, where projections have kind of been able to kick out some of the non-con stuff for him. But still, even at about 30 minutes at this price, I have him at nearly 4.5x, which is more than enough. So yeah, it's a good call out there. Jamarcus Lawrence is kind of interesting at 5.2. And like I said, if we knew Frager was going to play like 28 to 30 minutes, I would actually pull the trigger on him. I really like his game. I think he's going to be a big star next year. I hope they can keep him, but yeah, we'll move on here. One more question. How do you was saying, because it does impact quite a bit, Jarrell Bellamy at 4.9, 30 plus minutes. He actually is one of the better projections in this game. How much minutes do you think Sang gets here after missing nearly a month? Do you think he jumps right into 30? I think it's low 20s. Like, well, if you had to guess, what do you think that would be?
Yeah, it's probably somewhere in between. It's probably high 20s, I would say. But again, it's the tournament, so I don't see Scott Cross holding him back at all, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I would probably split the middle there if you're trying to project the minutes out.
Sounds good. Yeah, there's been some real weird stuff with minutes lately, so it's been key to predict them as accurate as possible. All right, we're gonna move on to a really intriguing matchup here. At least I think so, between the 6-seed Louisville Cardinals, 11-seed South Florida Bulls. A popular pick. I don't want to get into the popular upset picks too much. Drake a year ago, but it worked out. But then the South Florida game, the line's moved to 4.5 now. We're blessed enough to have the foresight to hit that the other day, early on at 6.5, 7. Total of 163.5. I think the over is in play here, but I like South Florida to win outright. And I know a lot of people do. Pretty much figured Michael Brown wasn't going to play, and once that news became official, the line moved pretty dramatically, which is kind of curious because I don't know how many people actually thought he would actually play. This is the Kashawn Pryor Bowl, I'm calling it, even though Pryor doesn't really play for the Cardinals. But this is a really intriguing spot for me with South Florida, not only in brackets, betting purposes, and all of that, but also their guys are priced super cheap. Isaiah Nelson is a guy, during the conference tournament and anytime that South Florida was on a slate, typically on Sundays, he was up over 10K, 10.3. He was damn near 11K at one point. Now we're getting him at 7.8 against a Cardinals front court that has talent in Sananda Frew, some YMCA baller game to him and Ali Khalifa. But I don't think they have the bodies to really deal with Nelson. The only thing to me feels like if he would be derailed would be from stupid foul trouble. But at this price point, we're talking about a massive upside, very safe floor. This would be a guy that I would start with in single entry, mania, head-to-heads, all of that stuff. I just don't see really much downside here for him. Wes Enos would have been a major problem even if Michael Brown did play. You remember in the AAC title game, Enos was on Kenyon Giles, who was fresh off a million threes in the game prior. Had only 5 points. Ennis is going to be a problem if he guards Conwell. Maybe he gets on Woolley, whoever that is. I want no part of it because of his amazing defense. But there's a potential stack here with South Florida. So Nelson for me at 7.8. I think he's probably going to be a little bit popular. It's a pretty large slate, so I am not anticipating like 80% ownership on guys, but I do think Nelson has a chance to be very, very high owned here, and he projects extremely well, as you can imagine. On the Louisville side here, you do have major value in Adrian Woolley at 4.9. I think he'll be a flagship piece for me. I'm a little confused about his ownership, though. Brown's been in and out of the lineup for a long time. Early on, Woolley, 4K, 3.8, major chalk. He still projected extremely well because the minutes we expected him to get. He was only 4.7 against SMU just a week or two ago, but he only came in at like 15% ownership. He put up 25. It was great. So I'm not quite sure what to expect here with people and where they stand with Woolley. I think we'll see some Hadley ownership. I think we'll see some McNeely ownership at 4.7. I'm not really there with McNeely. He did have 3 straight games over 25 fantasy points, but I just can't do it with him. And Conwell, even he looks pretty cheap at 8.1. But again, I think Enos is going to be problematic here defensively for him. But this game has definite stack potential to it. And I think the upside is live. What do you think?
Yeah, DFS wise, I would say this is, top 2 games to target on the slate. A total of 165.5. It just really sucks that Mikael Brown's not going to play, man. Those back injuries are just brutal. So that's sad from a fan standpoint. But this game is still awesome. I have to disagree with you, Walt. I'm on the other side of this.
Okay.
I really like that the markets bet this line down, and I'm definitely going to be on the Louisville side at 4.5. I'll tell you why. So both these teams structurally are very, very similar. Both are 80th percentile in tempo. Both have super high 3-point rates. Brian Hodgins used to be an assistant at Alabama, so he comes from the Nate Oates tree. So, pace and space, spread it out, chuck threes. Louisville plays kind of the same way. I agree with you that Isaiah Nelson is going to be the best big on the court. Fouls may worry me in this high tempo game, but he's been pretty decent with fouls, but it is a risk. I'm just throwing it out there. He's going to be high owned, probably one of the easier plays to throw into your lineup on the slate. But, I'm looking at these teams and I see them structured pretty much the same. I just think Louisville still, even without Brown, is more talented, right? Like, if I'm taking a look at Ryan Conwell, who is one of the best shooters in the entire country. Adrian Woolley last year is one of the best low mid-major freshmen in the entire country. Didn't get that much playing time this year, but the guy's still super talented. Isaac Neely, one of the best shooters in the entire country. Last year was the best player in Virginia. That backcourt is still awesome. And they do have some athletes. Like Roots comes off the bench, who's really good. Frew is pretty decent. Like these guys are still really good. I really like South Florida's backcourt. Like Ennis, Pinion, and CJ Brown are all very, very good. But I just think the Louisville backcourt's better. I think people aren't giving them enough credit and are a little, amazed by this little run that the South Florida's made. I mean, they've been really good in conference, but they went on a run in the conference tournament and they looked really good of late. But like 2 teams that are exactly the same, like I'd much rather pick South Florida in a matchup against a team that doesn't really do well in a high tempo game. Like Louisville's used to this. They played it all year. And I think they're just more talented. And I'll leave you with this. So South Florida played a couple pretty good teams in their non-conference. George Washington, they gave up 99 points against. Oklahoma State, they gave up 103. And Alabama, they gave up 104. Louisville's just as talented, way more talented than George Washington and Oklahoma State. A little less talented than Bama right now, but like Louisville can easily, even without Brown, put up close to 100 points against the South Florida defense. So, I'm on the Louisville side. I think anybody on the Louisville team is in play in a Mania, in a GPP. McNeely and Woolley, way too cheap. You can stack them if you like. And South Florida, Nelson's the best play, but Nelson and even Pinion Nelson's the best play, but even Ennis and even Pinion are really good plays as well. You can go nuts in this game if you want.
Yeah, maybe Louisville can just win by 5, and then we can both do that. I once I saw it go down, I was like, okay, I did the same thing with Miami of Ohio, which is working out right now, but there's still a lot of time. It's opened at 6.5. It immediately went to 9.5 on Fanatics, and I was like, whoa, I gotta get on this, and then it came back down. So, it's a different angle to look at. I just have trust issues with McNeely. I would love to see Connie Roofs play like substantial time here. They have been playing. He is really good. Athleticism out of everywhere, but they've been playing Vangelis Zuckerus a lot more too lately. And I think he got a start or two here recently. So Fru's been kind of not looked as great lately. But yeah, it's going to come down to some foul issues in the front there. I like Enos from an alt build standpoint. He's rarely rostered by people. He had a really porous non-con, which is a little bit nerve-wracking just because this is a better opponent. In fact, he had some really just like subatomic, terrible games that it took a while for his good games to catch up and even out his projections. He's one of those players that the projections don't normally like, but he's been awesome lately. So he's more of an alt build play for me. With Nelson and Woolley, I think being the two that I'll have in my main build here. So I think a lot of people will, but yeah, there's a lot of different angles that you can take with this game. By far, one of the best from a fantasy perspective on the slate.
I will move on. He's a really good player, Walt. South Florida, their rotation kind of shifted middle of the year where he's got a lot more playing time. So I think that has a little bit to do with it. And CJ Brown's minutes have gone down. So has Amajofo. His minutes have gone down a little bit. So the rotation has changed because he's been just so damn good.
Yeah, the fact that he can shut down the other team's best scorer the way he did it against Wichita State and still put up, 20 plus points himself. It's not easy to do. He exerts so much energy. You played, you know how it is. You exert so much energy on that end and being able to drop, 20 plus yourself, shooting 11 threes. It's pretty incredible. He does not get enough talked about. Nelson gets all the chatter, and rightfully so. But Innes, man, he's really good. So, all right, we'll move on to the next one here, which is Wisconsin taking on High Point in a 5-12 matchup. Total of 162.5, 10.5 point spread. Now this one's bounced around a bit. I saw it dip under 10, then I saw it go over 11. Right now it's settled in nice and snug at 10.5. It's the classic 5-12. I have had a ton of people ask me about this game. And normally, me, I'm always looking for an angle with the upsets. You mentioned the low and mid majors. There's a disparity here, and there is, and I think that it would have been less noticeable if some of the teams would have actually closed in their conference tournament. We got some teams like a 6-seeded Kennesaw State that got through, and there were some other teams that, maybe would have been more equipped for a possible upset. This is one 5-12 matchup that the second it was announced, I just saw Wisconsin winning here relatively easy. High Point has a lot of money for a low major in the Big South. They're going to dominate their conference for years to come until they get invited to a bigger conference because they have so much more NIL opportunities than the teams in their conference. They're going to keep pulling transfers high, not just JUCO guys either. What I like to call P5 cast-offs, power conference guys who didn't get minutes, come down for a year, play for us, get some money, go to the tournament. They're going to be a consistent 12 or 13 seed, I think, for years to come. But this matchup against Wisconsin, to me, doesn't seem great. I don't know how they stopped Blackwell and Boyd, who have been absolutely phenomenal. I saw it firsthand when I was watching them play my Huskies. We almost got them, but my God, the second half that Nick Boyd and John Blackwell had was pretty legendary. And I just don't see High Point having an answer for that whatsoever. Whether Nolan Winter plays or not is pretty irrelevant to me. But maybe you have a different take here. I have a feeling you're also on that same side, but I'm happy to be surprised if you aren't. What do you think?
You know me too well, Walt. I'm all Badgers here. This is just a really terrible matchup for High Point. To your point, they do have some high major athletes on the team, and the way that they've been successful this year is they're fully deploying those athletes and being super aggressive on defense. They are 5th nationally in turnover rate. They score a ton of points off turnovers. They play a super aggressive, hard hedge, trap off ball screens, just to try to force the other team to make a mistake against their athleticism. And it's worked in the low major conference. But then you walk into a backcourt of Nick Boyd and John Blackwell, who are number 1 in the country in offensive steal rate, so they never get the ball stolen from them, and they're top 5, I think, in turnover rate. So they have really, really good guard play. The one thing I will say is that I do think High Point is capable of taking Nick Boyd out of the game with that aggressive defense. But we know that the Badgers have really good spacing. They got really good shooting from their big guys. So this game can really, really open up at a high pace for guys like Blackwell, Nolan Winter, who sounds like he's going to be healthy for the game. Austin Rapp can stretch the floor. Carrington can come off the bench and hit threes. Like these off the ball players for Wisconsin are going to have big games in a game with a high total. So all those guys are live from a DFS perspective. I really like Blackwell a lot. He's a little priced up at 83, and so I think a lot of people are going to be away from him. But this is a game where he can have 50 fantasy points. So, I'm really interested in Wisconsin pieces here. And then on the other side, Wisconsin has struggled against guards throughout the year. So if you want to get some Rob Martin as a bringback or in a GPP, I don't hate it. But other than that, not too much interest in High Point players. I think this is going to be all Badgers all day. And I think a couple different guys can have pretty big days outside of Boyd.
Yeah. When it slipped under 10 there for about a half day, I was just like, man, how back up the Brinks truck here. Cause if this is going to go any further down, it's going to be a, generational wealth opportunity. Cause I just don't see it. So I had a feeling you'd say that. We'll probably see a bit of chalk for Austin Rapp. He's still priced way too cheap at 5.2. Michigan just did not feel like guarding him. So many wide open threes. They ended up losing 68-65, but there was a stretch there in the second half. He had 3 straight triples and he was guarded on none of them. Shot 6 for 11 from downtown. He's just bulk 3-point shooter at 5'2". And he's not just a 3-point shooter. He's rebounding at a high level. He's getting assists. He's blocking shots. He can do a lot at 5'2". Very strong overall play there for me. And I'm not too concerned about fouls necessarily with him like I might be with other players. So he's a strong play. I like the Blackwell call out. I think Boyd's I don't want to say he's too spendy at 9.2 because he's not, but I think that I could probably route my salary a little bit more economically and get a similar output. But I do have at least some alt team, interest in Cam Fletcher, who seemingly healthy, rust wiped away. Granted, the last time they played was on the 8th now, so that rust comes back. But geez, Louise, against Winthrop, he had a massive game. I think it might have been his best game ever. And we've seen him in a myriad of different jerseys, different situations, styles, whatever. 44 fantasy points for him in that game against Winthrop, 17 points, 19 rebounds. Absolutely legendary stuff there for Cam Fletcher. Played 29 minutes. Now that he's healthy, good to go, I think they unleash him. So a 30-plus minute Cam Fletcher, regardless of matchup, should be considered. He is a little, he's not coming into it super cheap by any means, so that does give me a little bit of pause. He's 6'6", so it's more of an alt build type play. I don't know that many people will be rostering him, but I think that, of all the High Point guys, he's one that could actually produce here and maybe won't be overwhelmed by the moment. So some interest there, but otherwise wrap for me and probably moving on. Big bet on Wisconsin, though, for sure. All right, we'll move on to the 116 matchup in the East here between Duke and Sienna. This is a total of 135.5, 27.5 point spread on DraftKings currently. Sienna, really nice run through the conference tournament for them. Coached by Jerry McNamara, coming out of the MAC, the MAAC. Lots of talk about him getting a high major job. He's done a great job here with Sienna. An angle here I've heard some people talk about, well, Duke will get up, then they'll call up the dogs. I don't know that they have any dogs to replace the ones on the court. They're so short-staffed, short-handed, whatever you want to say. So this would ordinarily be a spot where I might think, wow, that's a lot of points, but I think that's probably a stay away for me. You have, it's not, brain busting, mind blowing stuff, but you have to remind me and others, in these types of matchups, targeting big men is a good way to pay the bills. Cameron Boozer is very expensive here at 11.2. They won't have Caleb Foster. We know that probably for the entire tournament. And Mangba will probably miss this game, maybe the second round game, and be ready for Sweet 16. So we're still probably going to see 30+ minutes for Cam. I mean, we might see a pretty big number for him still. I have a lot of interest in Nicholas Kamenia. He's been coming on lately. Dame Sarr is still there, even though he's been a frustrating option. And Caden Boozer, the lesser talked about Boozer brother, has a really nice tournament in his own right in the ACC. So there's a bunch of different options here we can use, but Duke just doesn't have the bench to turn to. They're so injured in their second group that remains thrust into the starting lineup. They really only have maybe a 7-man rotation that they can trust. So even if this turns into a giant blowout, we'll probably still see a solid amount of minutes for that 6-man rotation. So ordinarily we might back off a situation here, but what do you think about Cam Boozer and anyone else in this game that you might be eyeing?
Yeah, I agree with you, Walt. I think with the short rotation, even at a total of 135, like there's Duke's implied number is still in the 80s.
Yeah.
There is fantasy points to go around for these 6 players, right? Yeah. Sienna does want to slow the game down. They're gonna try to put it at a snail's pace to compete. They play at 319th tempo nationally in the country, but they are very undersized. The game sets up really well for Cam Boozer to have a 25-15 game, a couple blocks, a couple steals. Malik Brown also sets up really well. I know he's high foul risk, so playing him at 5'9" is always really risky, especially on a 16-game slate. But this is a guy that can get 40 fantasy points and have 5 steals and 5 blocks in this game.
Yeah.
Even in a slow-paced game. So you also have Caden Boozer, who's coming off a 40 minutes game. If he's playing 40 minutes, I don't care who they're playing. 5,100 is too late for him as well. And Sarr and Committee are still priced too cheap as well if they're both playing 30 to 35 minutes. These Duke options are very viable. There's a lot of potential value on this slate. So if you want to fit Cam Boozer in at 11-2, you can definitely find some ways. So I don't hate it. If you like the value enough, you can slam him in, and his ceiling is 60 in this game. So maybe 70. So I don't hate it at all.
Yeah, it's kind of built in bus protection with the rest of your lineup, because if he does drop, right now at 35 minutes, I have him at near 50. So having, and I get a couple less, or maybe that's right on target. Having that 50 in your pocket there, and knowing that that's likely to come through. If somebody gives you a 3x or a 3.5x, you've got that semi protection there with Cam Boozer, and he's just the bust potential for him is so low, simply because they don't have the bodies, to really pull him. And this would be a good opportunity for Duke to use some of this, lesser experienced guys, and get them more minutes and more acclimated, more comfortable while they wait for Ngbangba and possibly Foster to return. So for me, I'm pretty big on Kamenia. You got the guard forward eligibility there. Projects quite well. Dame Sarr as well. He had a really nice game last time out, but he's hard to trust. I know the angle with Malik Brown, like you said, is very good. And then GPP wise, Isaiah Evans, shoot lights out. I think there will be a game coming up for him in the second round of the Sweet 16 where we might want to seriously consider him, but probably not so much here at 7-7 just yet. And then on the Sienna side, there are some guys. I mean, they're just as short-handed, obviously way less talented, but they're running out a 5-6-man rotation. They beat Merrimack, which was disappointing for me because I like that Merrimack team. But their starting 5 played 38+ minutes, all of them. They played one guy off the bench and Christian Jones for 6 minutes. So they're likely to see, Riley Mulvey, a familiar name for those of you who are out there who paid attention to Iowa over the last few years. He's playing 38 to 40 minutes. Who would have ever thought? Freshman Francis Fuldefek, who is probably going to be a transfer. He's playing big minutes. He can score. Brendan Coyle. I mean, these guys are pretty decent in terms of skill set, but God, it's such a tough situation for them coming in here and playing Duke. But again, playing 38 to 40 minutes, regardless, I mean, you get your doors blown off, but if you're on the floor, Foley is only 5'5". That's interesting. Mulvey is 4'8". I probably wouldn't play these guys in any main lineup because Mulvey's probably going to get into foul trouble. But then again, they just don't have the subs for them either. Antonio Chandler, they're still waiting to hear. It doesn't sound like he's going to get cleared. He was ruled ineligible. Important piece for them. But yeah, they're extremely shorthanded too. So might be a play on a team total there, which I do like in the last game on the slate for Idaho, which we'll talk about. But yeah, not time to quit Duke just yet. All right, we'll get into another 5-12 matchup here. Vanderbilt versus McNeese. Total of 149.5. Vandy currently 11.5 point favorite. I was hoping that one might get bet down a little bit more, but it hasn't. I think people are kind of understanding here. These 5-12 matchups aren't what they used to be. Vandy, one of the better 5 seeds I think we've seen in quite some time. Obviously, we have St. John's, a couple of others. McNeese did win a game last year, but I think that team was, I don't want to say significantly better. They have some pieces from last year, but they were definitely better. This is a brutal spot for them against Vanderbilt, I think. Why don't you break this one down for us?
Yeah, we're in agreement there, Walt. This is exactly like the High Point Wisconsin game where it's just an awful matchup for McNeese. Again, they are a team that wants to use their athleticism and force turnovers. They're number 1 nationally in turnover percentage. It seems like they're worried more about forcing a turnover and getting a steal rather than defending the rim. Like that's how aggressive they are. And then you put that kind of scheme against this Vanderbilt backcourt with Tyler Tanner and Duke Miles, who are just an elite backcourt, who take care of the ball, don't turn the ball over. They are 11th nationally in turnover offense. So I think that they can handle this McNeese pressure. And they've graded out great against presses all year. So like Vanderbilt should be scoring at will against this defense. I think 11.5 isn't enough. I think they cover the line pretty easily. I think it's turned into a blowout territory. So any of these guys on Vandy are live plays. Even Tanner at 9, Duke Miles at 8-2. Nickel can get going. He's going to get a lot of open shots in this game. And one of the 3 bigs, I know it's hard to predict, but Washington, Okereke, or McLaughlin, I think one of them are going to have a big game here just from getting the scraps off the pressure. My guess would be McLaughlin. But like if you're looking at GBP, sticking one of these guys in is a good idea because I think one of them is going to have a big game against McNeese. And then if you look on the other side, I mean, this is going to be a fast-paced game, and McNeese is still implied to score in the high 60s, low 70s. So like Larry Johnson and Tyshawn Archie both have like 30% usage rates, and they've been playing towards the tail of the season more like 35 minutes a game. So these guys do have potential, since it's going to be an up and down game, to put up some pretty decent fantasy point scores. So I don't hate looking at either of those two on the McNeese side. But overall, I think Vandy handles them pretty easily.
Yeah, projections wise, Archie and Johnson are right at the top in this game, as you can imagine. A little bit of Garwi Dual, but he's sometimes offensively challenged. But
guy.
yeah, he's been around. Man, Duke Miles is just playing incredibly.
So good.
So good. And 8-2, just it doesn't seem like that price is enough for me to fully get away. And I don't think he'll be that highly owned either, just because people might look at it and say, well, 800 more, I can get to Tanner, who's been great. But Miles just, I mean, unbelievable stuff. 52 against Tennessee, 47 against Arkansas, 34 against Florida. He's just been absolutely incredible. And you know, during his time at Oklahoma, we saw some flashes, but this is unbelievable the way he's playing. That price at 8-2, I just kind of zeroed in on that right away. I do like the we affectionately call him AK-47 in the Discord. I do like that call out. He could fill it up, and he does it almost like quietly at times. You look down and be like, wow, this guy's got 6 rebounds. All of a sudden he's got 5 assists, a couple blocks. He can hit threes. So I do kind of like him a little more than McLaughlin, just because of McLaughlin's previous foul issues and kind of breaking my heart. But I do like that a lot. I think one of those two could very well end up semi-optimal and you know, sub 10% ownership with relative ease. But yeah, I'm all over this Vanderbilt spread. You know, it almost feels like you could just slam Wisconsin with Vanderbilt together and just kind of rake. So that's a pathway I think I'm going to go. But yeah, Vanderbilt is moving on here. feel like the trade-off here, less upsets. It sucks. It's less drama, but then we get these Sweet 16 matchups that feel like Final Four matchups, Elite Eight matchups that feel like national championship matchups. So bit of a trade-off there, but we have some potential juggernaut matchups this year, which is a good thing. All right, let's move on to North Dakota State versus Michigan State, the champions of the Summit, coming in at 14 seed. Michigan State, the 3 seed. They are favored by 16.5 currently. Total of 143.5. I love the Summit. I've made some good money off of underdog props on the Summit League, their semifinals and their finals. Unfortunately, St. Thomas got beat up by Seattle U last night. Couldn't make it to the game last night, but I did want to. But this North Dakota State team, they're quite good coming out of the Summit. They have some solid players: Damari Wheeler-Thomas, who can shoot the shit out of the ball, Andy Stefanovic, who can facilitate. He can score a little bit. He can defend. They have some shooters: Carson, Trevian Carson, Trayson Anderson. They got some guys, but they don't face a team led by a March legend coach like Tom Izzo very often in the Summit, as good as the Summit is becoming very quickly. And this is another one where I feel like they could potentially just get smothered. But I also have this nagging feeling that Michigan State, quote unquote, plays with their food a little bit. Maybe an angle. 16.5 is really not that much. I was actually hoping it would be like 20-21 because I think that would have been a very strong bet on the Bison. But for DFS purposes and why we're truly here, I don't really like this game at all. So I'm hoping maybe you've got something in this one that you've unearthed. But with such a wide slate, this is one that I'd looked at and thought, hey, Kurt Tang's coming around. We know Fears is good, but I'm not paying $10K for him. Jackson Keeler can knock down threes, but 8-3, that seems a bit excessive. I'm just not finding an angle here that makes a lot of sense for me personally. So what do you got in this one in any kind of I guess sneaks for us in this matchup?
Yeah, I wish I can help you out, Walt, but I'm looking at the rosters right now, and I have nobody highlighted in this game at all. This is not a fun game at all. I have a play on the under 143.5. I think it's going to be super ugly. And it's just a really bad matchup for both teams, mostly North Dakota State, because both these teams, it's kind of like the Louisville, South Florida matchup. It's kind of like the Wisconsin High Point matchup. Like both these teams are structured very similarly. They both aggressively hedge on defense. They both have really heavy help gap defensively and overhelp a lot. Both teams play inside out, right? Michigan State plays through their bigs, so does North Dakota State. So they're very similar teams. It's just Michigan State's just way better. But I do think North Dakota State, with that defensive scheme, is going to try to get the ball out of Fears' hands as much as they can. So that could make the Sparty offense struggle a little bit. And North Dakota State wants to score at the rim. Michigan State, historically, under Tom Izzo, has been an elite rim protection team and rebounding team. So, I think both teams are going to have a really, really hard time scoring. Obviously, Michigan State's going to have much easier paths, but just the way that they're both structured very similarly, I think this is going to be more like an ugly, mucky game, which is not inducive of a high fantasy point DFS game, especially in a 16-game slate. So I have zero recommendations.
Yeah, it was tough. I really tried. I these are the type of games that I know, people just look at and write off immediately, and it's going to be low owned, and it's like, the old Virginia teams that really people just would be like, oh, it's a 120 total, but you could sometimes find a diamond in the rough there. But yeah, I had a real hard time. And Spartans games, man, there were some real ugly ones there. So not conducive to what we want to do here. So we'll move along. Next game on the slate here, 13 seed Hawaii, champions in the Big West, taking on the SEC tournament champion Arkansas Razorbacks. So we had our resident super fan there, Corey, just stopping by. I appreciate it. And real quick, AB asked about dropping some bets on Twitter. Yeah, my Discord will get most of them, but I will have one or two plays, and make sure we'll drop Mike stuff here at the end too. He drops some free plays on Twitter from time to time as well, so we'll get you guys some stuff. This one is going to be awesome. We go from an extremely ugly game in Michigan State, North Dakota State, to Hawaii, Arkansas. Darius Acuff is a monster. Man, he is so very good. Incredible stuff. The way that, it was one of like the only 3 freshmen to win the newcomer and the SEC Player of the Year since Anthony Davis did it in 2012, and I believe was named Brandon Miller did it as well. Man, he is so good. 9-5 in this matchup. I think Hawaii, when I first saw this and it was announced, I thought, damn, how are they going to handle what Acuff's going to do with their defensive style? And I looked at it a little more. I thought maybe they could hang around. They're top 50 in defensive efficiency, about top 70 in tempo. They have they've got some pretty good shooters. They can do some things on offense. I have a feeling they might hang around for a bit, but I just don't see them having an answer for the athleticism of Acuff, Trevon Brazile. Like, imagine, and this defense has been good for Hawaii, but when I think of like Isaac Finlinson, Harry Ruliadev, those type of guys, like Gaius Nimkaisa, who has, lost his starting spot for whatever reason, those guys trying to keep up athletically with Brazile, Richmond, guys like that, I don't see it. So I know a lot of people are picking Hawaii to cover. A lot of people maybe even hinting towards Hawaii winning. I don't see that. I think we're destined for a great second round matchup between Wisconsin and Arkansas. Fingers crossed on that one. But this is definitely a game that my projections like. Even with the DVP filter on, because guys on Hawaii are so cheap. Hunter Erickson is 4-5, playing 30 plus minutes. Finlinson, who I mentioned, at 4K, playing 27 to 30 minutes. Ruliadelph is 5K. His point prop has been free. It's been 8.5 and 9.5 on Underdog. We've just been slamming that over every single Hawaii game and cashing it. I still like those guys to perform to a degree. I just don't know if athletically this is going to be a good enough game for them. Acuff, if you're looking for a pay up and one that may not get the ownership he probably deserves, it's him at 9-5. I think this is the type of game, right off top, first game of the tournament, 40 plus, double with points and assists, possibly even flirting with the triple double, going right into that Wisconsin matchup, which is going to be, hopefully they island that game. Absolutely phenomenal. We also have some decisions to make here. Carter Knox still banged up. We've got a cheap price on DJ Wagner, who saw his minutes elevated recently. Nick Pringle is very cheap at 3.6, but minutes-wise are hard to peg. Malik Ewan, if you get him on the game where he's playing 35 minutes, he will absolutely destroy the slate at this price. But if you see a game where you're getting him playing 15 to 17 minutes like the SEC final, he completely detonates your lineup in a bad way. So a lot of uncertainty there with the Arkansas side. If you want to just avoid all that and roster Darius Acuff at 9.5, that's a really good way to go. And if you're a stacker like I am, you can really fit in some pieces from Hawaii quite easily because they're all cheap here. Even Dre Bullock at 6.8, I think, has some GPP appeal, although he's shown some weaknesses against upper tier competition in the past. One guy that I think will not be rostered by anyone, projects just okay at 8.5, is Trevon Brazile. In this role where there's just no bench for Arkansas and he's playing 35 plus minutes and he's not fouling like he would do at times when he was younger, he just puts up 40s like it's his job. I love him as a GPP play that I just don't think people are going to be on. So all over Arkansas here, but I think it's a pretty obvious game stack as well, even though defensively both of these teams have shown they can compete at a high level. Prices are just way under for, I think, both teams. What do you think?
I love coming on the show with you, Walt. You really know your stuff. You do. I got to give it to you.
I got it. When I have you on, I can't. There's no slacking because you drop the X's and O's. The defenses. I'm just like, man. I could just listen to you. I just tee you up and you knock them down. But I do appreciate that very much.
I want to echo. I think in the entire slate that Acuff probably has the best overall matchup against this Hawaii team, and the reason is because their defensive scheme is a very strict deep drop coverage, and they do not help off shooters at all. There's like zero gap help in their defense. So it's really just going to be, hey, let's let Acuff beat us and nobody else. It sets up as a really good game for probably the best guard in the entire country. So, I'm curious to see, like, maybe they switch to a zone, which they have done a couple times this year. But if they stick to their base defense, like, Acuff can go 40 to 45 points, real points in this game. Yeah. On the Hawaii side, they play fast. Like the total is 160 around. So like there is fantasy points to go around even on the Hawaii side. If I'm thinking about the spread, I don't have a play on this game, but if I did, I probably would lean the Hawaii side just because I do think that's probably a good strategy is, hey, let's let Acuff get all of his and let nobody else, like Billy Richmond, get nothing, Brazil get nothing, Malik Thomas hopefully gets nothing, and just have everything focused on Acuff. I think that's maybe a good strategy to kind of take the team out of rhythm. 15.5 points is a lot of points, and like I do think they're going to struggle with the Arkansas athleticism, but this Hawaii team is big. They start 7 foot, 6'9", 6'8", Bullock 6'6" as a shooting guard. So like they have some size to compete with a high major, so they could hang around. And they have some players. So like I don't hate taking Hawaii. I probably have a lean that way. I don't think I'm going to pull the trigger. But from a fantasy perspective, I agree with you. There's some players here. I actually love your Brazil call too in a GPP. That's like a 2% winning play right there if he can go for like 50 fantasy points, which is totally possible in this game. But Acuff's the guy. And then on the Hawaii side, like Erickson and Finlinson, they both play 30, 35 minutes. Like those are good value plays in a high-paced game here. So you can sneak those in and play Acuff and put those guys in and play a Cam Boozer. Those guys are live as value plays.
Yeah. And the look on Brazil is that, like, regardless of opponent, he's just so good, peripherally speaking. He could have like 7 stocks in this one, maybe even more, and that just racks up points so quickly. And he's been scoring a lot more lately, so that's obviously going to help things. But right when I thought about you immediately, because the drop coverage, you hammered that in my head. You're very knowledgeable about it. As soon as I saw this matchup, I was like, look out! The deep drop coverage, like you said, Acuff is going to absolutely penalize them. But yeah, 15.5 points does seem like a lot, but I think I'm going to end up staying away from it myself. But DFS wise, all the way in. All right, moving on to the next game here, we have the 11-seeded VCU taking on 6-seed North Carolina. Perhaps VCU, I want to start with this, saying they might have a chip on their shoulder. The committee chair did say that had they not won the auto bid, they weren't getting in, which is a bit curious, but we don't have to get into that. We've talked about that many times over the last few days. North Carolina is the 6th seed. They're 2.5-point favorites, total of 152.5. There's several teams in the tournament that are vulnerable because of injury stuff. UCLA, they're getting their guys back, but I don't know how healthy they're going to be. We know Louisville missing Michael Brown, Texas Tech, obviously no JT Toppin, and then you have North Carolina, no Caleb Wilson. They have been without him for, what feels like over a month now. They've had time to adjust but still not having Caleb Wilson is just such a hard thing for me to get over. I think that VCU has to be considered live. The fact is VCU has such a deep rotation, so many guards they can throw at you. They have bodies. What team could really sit here and say, I think we could probably say Lazar Djokovic is probably like their best overall player or one of the top 2. He frequently disappears for long stretches and does nothing, and they're still kind of, bowling over teams. Granted, it was in the A10, but they have different options. Michael Bell off the bench scoring double digits regularly. Terrence Hill could be a starter for 80% of other programs out there. He's scoring double digits. Nick Lewis had like the best game of his life. We've been waiting for this game from him all year. He finally did it. It's just a deep rotation of VCU that I think is going to be problematic for North Carolina. With that being said, VCU, because of that deeper rotation, can be quite frustrating. You look at these prices, you say Barry Evans is 4-5. Man, how do I not get him in? Just doesn't do anything offensively. You see Michael Bell come in, he's shooting threes, doing things. Then you finally get a read on Brandon Jennings. Then the Nick Lewis game happens. Jadrian Tracy is down there at 4K. How many minutes will he get? He was finally starting to play like 30 minutes consistently. Then 3 of his last 4, he's played under 20. So it is very frustrating from that standpoint. I do like VCU to win. I do like the fact that all the prices of VCU are under 7K. My primary kind of alt build GPP type of look from this game would be Terrence Hill. I think he could have a potentially big game. And then, maybe a heat check on Nick Lewis, but I don't like playing him over 5K. Probably mostly just back to Barry Evans begrudgingly because he is so cheap. And then on the UNC side, Henry Visar, no Caleb Wilson, so he has to have a big game, but 9.4 is a lot, I think, for him. Bogovac at 4.9. He's had some nice games for us earlier in the season. Zayden High has amazing fantasy point per minute stuff. He's there at 3.3, but even with VSAR around, he's just not getting the minutes. It just seems like a very ill-equipped spot for North Carolina. Although I did hear a pretty compelling argument for North Carolina advancing via their guard play, but I don't know if I'm there with them. What do you think about this one? Who do you like? All that good stuff.
Yeah, my response to that is what guard play is my response to that.
That's right.
So I have pretty good conviction on a lot of these matchups in the tournament. I would say I have the least on this game. I keep flip-flopping back and forth. And what we were just previously talking about is guard play. Like, that's going to be the difference in this game. Both teams played drop coverage. So it's going to be a lot of guards getting in the paint and trying to make decisions. Where what VCU really wants to do is get in the paint and drive and kick. They 85th percentile nationally in catch and shoot rate, right? They really just want to get in the lane and kick it out. Where UNC kind of stays home on shooters and wants you to shoot and like force you to the rim and maybe shoot in the mid-range. So it's really going to depend on how good of a game I think Terrence Hill has. And he's been really good down the stretch. So I do have like a slight lean to VCU just because of that. Rather than the VCU drop, like, who's going to navigate that? Is it going to be Trimble? Is it going to be Dixon? Is Kyan Evans going to play? I have much less. I don't want to say much less. I have a little less conviction that the UNC can handle VCU's drop versus VCU handling the UNC drop. But on the other side, UNC does have the paint advantage. VSAR could have a big game against VCU. Djokovic's a great player, but VSAR could eat him up a little bit, I think, in this matchup. So you have the paint slight advantage on UNC side, but I think you lean towards Hill navigating the drop coverage on the VCU side. It's a coin flip. I ended up picking VCU in my bracket. I'm definitely not going to bet this game. And maybe I'll have a play on the under. 153.5 is a little high for teams that I think are going to struggle against each defensive scheme. Another point is that UNC has not been great. I saw something. If you go on Bart Torvik and you adjust for all the games without Caleb Wilson, they're ranked like 40 something nationally. They haven't been great without Caleb Wilson, so I think that injury means a lot more than maybe some other injuries that we're looking at. From a bottom line is from a fantasy perspective, I don't really see much here in a 16-game slate. The only guy I have circled to maybe play is Jaren Stevenson, just because he's been getting a lot of minutes and rebounding the ball really well. So he can stumble upon a 10-8 game at 5 with a couple blocks, a couple steals, get his way to 25 fantasy points at 5K. But don't think it's the greatest matchup.
Yeah, I think that the backers of North Carolina really I've seen pushing the Seth Trimble takeover pathway. He's certainly capable. Yeah, he's certainly capable, but it's just, I don't know that my trust is there with him. I think he could have a nice game. 6'9" for the role he's going to have is pretty interesting, but I think it's a bit too lean to really target, like you said. And the VCU value, even when I fade it and it's super chalky, I rarely find myself regretting it. It's just so high variance. So yeah, we can move on to the next one here. The 16 seed Howard won the play-in game yesterday. All the UMBC backers take that. I love this Howard team. Taking on the 1 seed Michigan. It's a 31.5 point spread, total of 151.5. Obviously, you can never say never, I guess, because you never would have thought that Virginia would lose to a 16. You never would have thought that Purdue would lose to a 16. And I'm not setting this up for like Howard to win or anything, but this Howard team is pretty damn good. Coming out of the MEAC, 24-10. It was a really good game with UMBC, honestly. Cedric Taylor, Bryce Harris, really like monster talents. I think Harris is out of eligibility, but Taylor would not shock me if he gets, the call to the portal. Cam Gillis, same thing. Okoji is a really much better 3-point shooter than he looks on paper.
Or his form looks.
His form. Yeah, that's true. He knocks him down though.
He did.
This is an interesting spot. On the turbo slates, I think this is on one. I have some real interest in some of these Howard guys. Koji mostly at 6K.
You're something else, Walt.
But obviously not on the full slate, not in a main, not anything like that. But just a 1% play, because what I saw from the Michigan defense letting Austin Rapp just hit 3 after 3. Koji, man, if you leave him open, he's going to knock some down. And 6K, he's put up 3 straight games of 30+ fantasy points. Granted, that's against UMBC, Central, South Carolina State. I know none of those teams are Michigan, but I think there's a pathway here via volume for him. But I want to be clear, it's not a main slate play. He's a 10th alt lineup or a turbo play. This is a clear spot for Michigan, obviously. And in a prime, Cutri special, big men versus a lower, I don't want to call them lower talented because they are very talented, but ill-equipped to handle the front court of Michigan. I mean, teams in their own conference in the Big Ten are ill-equipped to handle this front court, let alone a MEAC team. So Morris Johnson 7.2, Ademara 7.3, even Yaxel at 8.9 is somewhat cheap for him. All 3 of those guys should have a relatively good game. Do you have a lean on any of them, doing so, or are you kind of worried here if it turns into a blowout, which we've seen before? They'll all play mid-20s minutes and wind up 3x, which just isn't going to help us clearly. What do you think?
I will say at first, I do agree with you that this Howard team is fun as hell. They are very talented, and these guys can play. But the problem is they're going to get nothing at the rim here against Michigan.
Yeah,
Walt. They're literally going to get 0 layups against this Michigan team. So they're set up to get blown out here. All these Michigan guys I thought would be priced higher, so they're all in play. Like Mara can play 20 minutes and go for close to 40 fantasy points in this matchup. Morris Johnson can dominate. The problem is it's just like one of these guys is not going to have a good game, and maybe like 2 of them are. And it's just like, do you want to be in that situation where you're kind of guessing? That's what makes it worrisome. I think the best play in this game is Trey McKinney. I think he's going to play close to 30 minutes, especially if this game gets a little out of hand. At 4K with his usage rate, he can easily put up 25 fantasy points at 4K, which would be amazing. I also, going back and forth on Cadeau. Since Kaysen's been injured, he's been locked into at least like 32, 33 minutes a game. And with his assist rate, he can smash that if he stays on the court. I'm afraid that Howard's going to resort to zone, which if they do, then it probably takes me off Cadeau. So I'm a little worried about that. But if this game's going to get up and down, like Cadeau can have 15 assists and 10 points really easily at 6'1", which is cheap for him. Like him playing 35 minutes a game, he should be a 7'5", 7'7" type player. So I'm interested in all these Michigan guys, but I think McKinney's probably my favorite as a value play, I would say.
Yeah, I really like McKinney. He's going to be sticking around for at least another season. He's going to be quite good next year. We're going to be talking about him as like an 8K, 9K guy, I have a feeling. Already shooting 38% from long range, very comfortable. Minutes have been ramping up. I did see a clear step back for Michigan with Kaysen going down, which I didn't expect because, Kaysen, going back and looking, he did play a lot better than you kind of have a tendency, or I have a tendency to kind of see the guard play just kind of blend together for Michigan. Nothing really stands out, but they have taken a big step back, I think, without him. But McKinney playing more minutes is never a bad idea, never a bad thing. And yeah, if he gets close to third, I mean, even at his normal, quote unquote, at 21, 22, he projects pretty well just at 4X. But if we crank him up to 26, 27, we're talking about, one of the top values on the slate. So I like that. Not without frustration though, just like the Michigan bigs, you roster McKinney, then you watch Roddy Gale hit 4 threes and think why. Namari Burnett comes out and scores 18 first half points. We've all been there with this Michigan team. They are frustrated in that regard. But I do want to delve in here and get some pieces, maybe, you know, in the $20 GPP or whatever. But I am going to be close to rostering McKinney in Maine. I don't know that I necessarily have to, but definitely like it. And Mara at 7-3, man, that's going to be really hard. I like Morez Johnson, probably he's like one of my favorites on this team, but Mara is a guy that I find myself always rostering. Might have a ton of rebounds and stocks in this game, which, you know, at 7-3, he doesn't even need to score more than 6 points to really break value. So that'll be one that I'm looking at heavily. Still haven't quite decided where I want to do though. All right, we'll move on to 6-11 matchup here between BYU and Texas. Texas winners last night in the first 4 over NC State. Although they did their best to try and hand that game to Will Wade and his crew, they did survive thanks to Tremont Mark's circus shots. I don't know how he did it, but he did it. 2.5 point spread here in favor of BYU, total of 157.5. I'm a little surprised. I thought that would maybe be like mid 160s. I don't think either of these teams are equipped or want to play defense right now, which makes me feel like AJ DeBonsta might be someone we have to seriously consider here. Probably still, even with all the value on the slate, can't roster both Boozer and DeBonsta. I mean, you can, but he's only 10K compared to the 11-2 for Boozer. A more competitive game and 39 to 40 minutes out of him feels like a slam. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I hate both of these teams so much right now. Just like after watching Texas last night, they pulled up the victory, but they did not look good. They did not earn it. I'll tell you that. And BYU without Richie Saunders has looked like a shell of himself, and it's really just a DeBonsta show, which, you know, is entertaining at times, but winning basketball is, I wouldn't call it winning basketball. So yeah, I'm not excited for this from like a matchup perspective, but I agree with you that the way that Texas plays defense, especially with that deep drop coverage and trying to funnel everybody to Volk, like DeBonsta can eat that up. I think him, Acuff, and Cam Boozer are the 3 best plays on the slate, even at their prices, and I think all of them are going to roster high ownership. So it's going to come down to which one are you choosing in your main. All 3 of them are great plays, and it's hard to say you can go one way or the other. But like you said, he has a great matchup here. It's a high total game. I think KenPom has it at 165. I know the spread's 157.5, but it was projected to go higher. There is one slight thing that I worry about is that Dylan Swain's probably going to be guarding him, who's a plus defender. But, you know, BYU is so creative in their offense and how they get him in his spots to score. I don't think it really matters. But Robert Wright's also in a great spot here too against the Texas drop. And their point of attack guard defense is way worse than when Dylan Swain's guarding somebody. Like you just saw Copeland Copeland didn't play well last night, but he had a lot of room to operate against that Texas defense. And then also from a fantasy perspective, if you don't want to play McKinney, you can go over to this game and play Kennard Davis at 4,100, who is locked in for 35 minutes. Not really a high usage guy, but you know, if he can get hot in a hurry, he's a good 3-point shooter. He mixes in some rebounds here and there, and he can mix in some steals as well. He's way too cheap at 4,100. He should probably be 5K. So there's another good value play if you're trying to get one of these studs in your lineup. And on the Texas side, you know, BYU hasn't really played. They want to get up and down the court and haven't really played good defense for the tail end of the year, but I don't think I want to get my feet wet with any of these Texas players in a slate like this. So I don't have anybody circled on their side.
Yeah, this game, man, especially with Texas, like what was that Jordan Pope performance? Like I don't ever use him typically, but it was a 2-game slate and it's like, oh, he's cheap. He's going to have to shoot a lot. And then just stood in the corner. I hate when he does that. I'm getting a fair amount of questions today about, oh, Kendall Weaver's only 3.8 after his huge game. And I'm like, well, pump the brakes because usually what I've been saying to people is how many minutes is he going to play. And then that's when people say, well, what do you mean? And it's like, well, he's going to play 7 minutes or he's going to play 30 because that makes a difference. I don't know the answer to that. And because I don't know the answer to that, he's not the slam dunk at 3.8 that maybe people will look and be like, this guy just put up 30 at a sub 4K price point, because the second that you go there, he'll play 10 minutes and we'll see Simeon Wilcher play 30 or Camden Heide, Nick Cody. I mean, there's just no rhyme or reason to the secondary options on this team. I almost kind of hope that Weaver just ends up being like 30% owned, because I'm willing to fade that even at 3.8, just because I don't believe the minutes. Swain is also super frustrating for me right now. I had a pretty live ticket last night for almost $2,000 if he could have scored 19 points. He couldn't do it. That's okay. But yeah, the Devonsta play is one I've been really thinking about. Love the Kennard Davis call. Would rather just pay 300 more for him, because I know the minutes will be there for him. And then, some interest for me with Kebakita. He's going to have to step up at some point. Did have a nice game against Houston. In 27 minutes, had 13 boards, put up 30 fantasy points. That was one of the best, more complete games I've seen from him this entire season. He is priced at just 4.7 there. So I do feel like he's a much better play to me than like a Barry Evans type in a similar price range, similar style. But got to avoid fouls, of course. So, I think this BYU kind of almost like a mini value stack might make a little bit more sense than just paying up for Debensta. But man, that 10K price point for him is really quite cheap. All right, we will move on here to the 10-7 matchup between St. Mary's and Texas A&M. It's a total of 147.5. St. Mary's right now favored by 3.5 points, and a total contrast in style. It's a classic one at that. The Gales, man, if they could just get past the second round ever. I don't know if they're going to this year, but I do like them in this matchup against the Aggies. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is one of the more fun games, the first round of the tournament. Like you said, complete contrast of styles. St. Mary's is 298th nationally in tempo, where Texas A&M with Bucky Ball is 29th nationally in tempo, and they press, the full court all game long, nonstop. What I was really looking at was St. Mary's last year in the tournament played a Vanderbilt team that kind of profiled similarly. They didn't full court press the whole game, but they played at a really high tempo, wanted to get up and down the court. And last year in the tournament, St. Mary's was 100% able to dictate the pace, and that game only had 59 possessions, and St. Mary's walked away with victory. Flip to this year in the non-con, St. Mary's played that same Vanderbilt team again, and we know Vanderbilt likes to get up and down the court, but this time they were not able to dictate the pace, and that game had 72 possessions, and they lost by 26 points to Vanderbilt. So, what's the difference there? Why didn't it go the same way for St. Mary's? I think it's because they lost their point guard last year. Marcelo Leonis is not on the team anymore. The ball is in Mike Lewis's hands a lot, who's not really a true point guard. He's more of a scorer. He's not like a game manager. So they don't have that traditional guy who's really going to sit down and dictate the pace. So I do think that Texas A&M is going to be able to rattle St. Mary's a little bit in this game and force it to be a high possession game that definitely leans to their favor. I have a play on Texas A&M at 3.5. And, from a fantasy perspective, in a 16-game slate, you can never play a Texas A&M guy just because of their massive 20-guy rotation. And on the St. Mary's side, I have some interest in Mikey Lewis because of the pace bump he's probably going to get. And he seems like he's been unleashed, for lack of a better word, over the last few weeks by Tony Bennett. He's been taking massive amount of shots. So AK is a good price for him, but that's really the only guy I have interest in from a DFS perspective. I think Texas A&M is going to make them a little bit more uncomfortable than we're used to seeing a Tony Bennett team in a game like this.
Yeah, I think we might see a bit of ownership on this game based on what I'm seeing, reading, hearing. I don't look at a lot of other people's stuff, but I do kind of make my rounds around social media and have conversations with people. The prices on St. Mary's just, they're finally at a level where it's like, okay, I don't feel obligated. They're for so long, Lewis priced at 5K. Dent was way down there. Dylan Shaw was priced at like 5K. You just almost had to roster these guys. So they kind of did us a favor by pricing them appropriately to where we don't feel pigeonholed into necessarily using them. Also, the difference between Shaw and Dent is pretty substantial there in 1,600, but I don't feel confident in guessing the production for those two because they do take from each other. And as you mentioned, Lewis has just been such a high usage guy lately, taking over. He's not much of a sharer, for lack of a better term, and I don't want to pay 8K for him. And I just don't feel great about the other options. So I do like St. Mary's quite a bit in this game, honestly, but I don't see the angle for DFS purposes. And then when you get over to old Buckyball here, the rotation for Texas A&M is a little difficult as well. Like we know Rashawn Agee athletically, he might give some of the front court of St. Mary's some problems. He's a little too spendy for me near at 9K. Rylan Griffin and Pop Isaacs, who's been resurrected here, and had some nice games. Really hard to trust him, especially at 5'7". The second that you do trust him, then that'll be when, Dominguez or Ali Dibba, have a big game. So it's kind of a write-off for me, where I think this game will be pretty entertaining to watch and a good one on paper. I don't think it's great for DFS. So we'll move right along here to our next game, which is a matchup between 3-seed Illinois and 14-seed Penn. The Quakers coming out here. They're in the South, winning the Ivy, cashing a plus 700 future for us. I think you'd be proud of that one. Great game from TJ Power, 44 points and 14 rebounds. Just like a legendary performance. Absolutely love it. Fran McCaffrey, the head coach of Penn, coming into this after that game, I thought, hey, they had a chance. They got the right matchup. They could do some things. I don't think they got the right matchup. And on top of that, they still aren't going to get Ethan Roberts back, who had the concussion a while back. Symptoms still happening. That's not a good sign at all. I hope they can figure that out. And then we got the news today that TJ Power, the former Duke and Virginia transfer who had the legendary Ivy League tournament game, is now severely sick with what's starting to sound like mono. I don't think it is, but the way they're talking makes me feel like it is. Real bad situation here for Penn. When I see a 25.5 point spread in this game, I really want to click Penn and fire away. Total of 151.5, by the way, which I think is the over would have been live if Penn's guys were available. But now that Powers might not play, Power, if he does play, he's going to be way less than 100%. It sounds like they just don't have the offensive weaponry. They're going to get blasted. I feel very sick about it because Penn was so good to me in the Ivy League tournament, and I really was looking forward to this matchup. But you take two key players away, that's just hard for any team to try to overcome. Illinois' size in this one alone just gives them such a dominant, expectation here. It's unfortunate, but DFS purposes, I don't know that there's any secondary guys for Penn that we can look at. If Power is out, I don't think it's really worth it. And on the Illinois side, I think it's going to be a bit mucked up. We might see some secondary guys play some elevated minutes here. Taking 2, 3, 4 minutes away from the starters is enough to really erode away their value to me. So this game, which looked pretty solid on Sunday, no longer looks that appealing to me. And I'm now picking Illinois in survivors because it just seems like a no-brainer that they'll advance and also win by 30 plus points, which is pretty sickening. But I don't know if there's any other outcome here happening, at least in this universe. What do you think?
Yeah, Illinois, similar to Michigan, is built to blow out mid-low major teams with their elite size, with their spacing, and their ability to mismatch hunt and just like dominate from that kind of perspective. They're set up to blow these kind of teams out. Like 24.5 may not be enough points here for this Illinois team. From a fantasy perspective, if Power is out, maybe he played too hard in the championship game. But I'm curious. I got to do a little bit more work to see maybe somebody gets like a huge minute usage bump that could be viable. Probably not, though, especially in a large slate like this. But I have a little bit of interest on some Illinois guys just because they could score 100 points in this game. I really like Boswell at 6,100. And I know if I play him, I'll be like 1%. I'll be on Boswell Island. Yeah. But his prices come way down because he's been in foul trouble the last few games. And then prior to that, he came off an injury. So his price is really depressed for a guy that when he's fully healthy, he's more of a 1B to Keaton Wagler's 1A than a role player. And we've seen him put up 20-plus point games with 6 assists and 5 rebounds, a couple steals. Like his upside is there. So I don't mind playing Boswell here at this depressed price in a game where they could score 90 points. Stojakovic in these kind of games always tends to show out, and he can score 30 fantasy points at 6'1". So, and also Merkovich, right? Like, remember in the beginning of the season when they were playing these lower teams in the non-con, this guy was putting up like 20 rebounds a game. So like these guys can put up high fantasy points at low ownership later in the slate. So I have some interest, especially in GPPs of some of these guys.
Yeah, sorry, I was reading a message. The Zvonimir, you mentioned some Illinois exposure here. I like, but you're a Boswell. Let's be clear to people who maybe don't know. You're a Boswell super fan. Like you've won some good money with this guy. So 6'1" is a very good price for him. I have him in our dynasty league. He's great when he's on. Like the Merkovich call, he's a little underpriced at 8K there. Maybe more of a luxury play. I kind of want to pull the trigger on main team Zvonimir Ivicevic, just because
Jake Davis is cheap too.
Cheap. His fantasy point per minute number remains extremely high. He only needs 18 minutes per my model to really make value at this price. And if he gets over 20, which he's seen 21, 22 minutes here in some games, he'll go well over 20 fantasy points. Blocks and rebounds alone, and then he can hit a 3. He can make some shots. There's some things he can do. So yeah, I really like him at that price point. And I don't know that people will go there just because he's not really a click that most people look for. And there is there's a variety of value here in different pathways. So I'm looking at a main look for Zvonimir Ivicevic. We'll see if that actually happens. And then the Penn play that does pop model wise, if Power's out, because he's going to play 30 plus minutes at 3.9. Augustus Gerhardt, he did play. Let me pull up his log here. I believe he played close to 30 minutes last game too without Roberts. Let me just pull this up. 33 minutes in the final against Yale. He only had 11 fantasy points though, but I mean, somebody's got to do something if Power's not around. There's got to be points. There's shots available at the very least, and that's the type of player who could get 5, 6, 7 rebounds just from being on the floor that long, maybe a couple of assists. So a low end value for sure, but that's one I identified as a possible benefactor of guys being out. All right, we're making great time, by the way. Yeah, let's keep going. Takes us to the last third of the slate here, or the last 3 games, I should say. Another 8-9 matchup between the Billikens of St. Louis and Georgia Bulldogs. This is a total of 169.5, so a lot of points expected in this one. Georgia is favored by 2.5. I don't know about that one. I know a lot of people are down on the Billikens right now, but Adam, we were talking last night. It almost seemed like they slept walk through the last month of the season. Like, they could have done some damage. They could have put themselves in the tournament, but I think they in the back of their minds kind of knew that. And Coach Schertz is great. I don't think he would let his guys do that, but it definitely seemed like effort has to be called into question on some of the last games that St. Louis played. I do think they'll kick it back into high gear here. And let's be clear, I don't have trust for either of these teams. But gun to my head, if you ask me which one I want to, put my tournament life on the line with, it would be St. Louis, just because they're super elite shooting the 3 ball. They have, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Robbie Avila, skilled, big doughy white guys, and well, I guess he's multinational. Have had success in this tournament before. I think Cam Krutwig from Loyola, and I just think that they have enough athletically to keep up with an SEC team here, but also just punish any lazy defense at all. And if Georgia, which sometimes beats themselves turnover wise, if that happens here, St. Louis will get a comfortable lead. So I don't think it'll be a blowout by any means, but I do think if Georgia gets sloppy, this one could get ugly. So I like St. Louis straight up. And I do have some interest here in various guys for DFS purposes, but it's mostly in the secondary market. Who do you like here?
I don't really have a high conviction on this game. Another one of those.
8-9s are hard. They're hard every year, but I feel like this year they're especially hard. The 8-9 game.
It's a tough one because I think it's a high variance outcome, right? Because Georgia plays at a crazy breakneck speed and wants to get up and down the court. They press a lot. And they just throw like an army of athletes at you. They kind of remind me of those old Leonard Hamilton, Florida State teams, right? Where you just have a ton of athletes. You take some bad shots, but you live with it. But you just let them fly up and down the court and make the other team uncomfortable. And St. Louis is a way more structured, but they want to shoot. They really want to shoot the three. They love to get the 3-pointer up. They got a ton of gunners out there, but that also makes them a really high variant team as well, because you're not always going to shoot well. In those types of matchups, I always lean towards the athleticism, because I think that's just a little more consistent than relying on the 3-pointer. Like, I think Georgia can make them a little uneasy, a little uncomfortable. So I do have Georgia moving on in my bracket, but I don't have a play on this game because it's a coin flip, if we're being honest. From a fantasy perspective, there's tons of fantasy points to go around, but you can't really play anybody on Georgia in a 16-game slate because of their massive rotation. The one guy you can look at is Kareem Stagg at 3-6 because he starts. Probably only going to play 16, 18 minutes. But his rates are really, really good. And in a game where they're projected to score like 85 points, that's 3-6. It's not a bad idea. And then on the St. Louis side, they also play a pretty deep rotation, but it's shrunk a little bit down the stretch, where in the beginning of the season, we were seeing like Avila play maybe 25 minutes a game and McCutri play maybe 22 minutes a game, where they're both more towards 30 now. So I have some interest there. There's definitely going to be fantasy points to go around. So they're viable options at 7-6 and 6-6. And then you got the two shooters, snipers with Trey Green and Sharma at 48 and 4,400, which are options as well if you're looking for value, if you think that they're going to knock down some shots. And then you got Kellen Dames there at 5,100, who is a fantasy point per minute monster, but he's only going to play 20 minutes, 18 minutes. So there's some guys on here, but I don't think there's any home runs, Walt. Like, I'm not in love with any of these guys, but if I see Avila out there as a last man in, or McCutri, or any of these value plays in a GPP setting, I'll be tossing a few of them in.
Oh yeah, definitely. Great, solid large field plays, but not ones you can really trust. I mean, 2 games ago, McCutri was pretty popular. Had a rough game, played 16 minutes. And following game, he plays 29, has no ownership, and puts up a 40. So just very hard to peg. I did notice that Georgia, especially the last month of the season, has been pretty susceptible to giving up threes, and their overall 3-point percentage defense not the greatest. So I do kind of like Trey Green. I would have liked to have maybe gotten a little bit more of a discount to like 4.5, 4.4, somewhere in that range. You mentioned Sharma as an interesting GPP look, but I think one of those guys between Green, Sharma, like a Jones, is going to pop off. But unless you're running multiple lineups, it's pretty unlikely you land on the right one, which is the main problem. And I haven't written them off, speaking of Georgia, but it would take a really strong angle, multiple guys out, and just almost an act of God for me to roster any Georgia guys in my main lineup at this point. It got so bad that even when they did have injuries, I was just kind of passing them along. Canning Catchings looked like in a great situation. He had a bad game. The very following game where I fade him, he puts up like 50. Dylan James gets a spot start, fantasy point per minute monster. Nobody else on him. Great. What an amazing spot. Ends up playing 10 minutes. Like, I just don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with this team. So we'll move along here. We've got Kennesaw State, the champions from the CUSA tournament, as a 6 seed, taking on Gonzaga. And this is a tailor-made spot for a big man like Graham Ike, or perhaps some secondary options to absolutely just detonate. I feel like, the nice things about this, and I always loved Mania and head-to-head stuff, is, there's a lot of chess match-esque type of strategy here, outplaying your opponent, figuring out their salary, making swaps. You could really almost get into people's heads, which I find entertaining and fun to do. And I think by the time we get to this last 3 or 4 games, people are just tired. Not everyone can be a sickle like you or me, I guess, to a lesser degree. And this is a game that might not have the ownership that it deserves. Couple different angles to go here. Graham Ike just absolutely nukes Kennesaw State. They have no answer. He puts up 50. Kennesaw State, top 25 in tempo per Ken Palm. They're a pretty good offensive rebounding team. They do block a lot of shots. They also get their shot blocked at a pretty high clip. Really great run through the CUSA. Had some pretty nice. I should say have some nice talent on here. Would be a lot different if Simeon Cottle wasn't betting on himself. But Ike is a great pay up, and I think people just aren't going to get there. And it's a very simple strategy, but it works. Targeting those type of players in these matchups in the tournament. So I like Ike a lot. I don't think they're going to get Braden Huff anytime soon. There's talk of maybe the Sweet 16. I don't think he's going to play at all. It just the recovery is not going the way that they need it to. So they're going to have to go without him. I think they're fine. If they had him, I might think they're a legitimate Final Four caliber team. As is, I think even without him, they have a legit shot at the Elite Eight. I'll be clear about that. But I might tend to get a little cute here because I think there's some options we can look at here. Secondary Gonzaga players who don't have the same tournament experience Tyon Grant Foster has, Graham Ike has. Adam Miller doesn't really have that, but he's been around. But a guy like Davis Fogel, who is a little spendy at 6'5", but I feel like this is a great spot where they're going to want to give him, 25 to 30 minutes. His fantasy point per minute numbers are very impressive, and there's a reason his price has crept up to this level. Throughout the WCC tournament, he had really big games against Santa Clara. He put up damn near 40, playing 26 minutes. He had a 13-8-6 stat line, nearly a triple-double. He does this a lot, actually, and people don't even realize it. 9-6-2, 18-5, and 3. Like, he's just filling up the stat sheet. He's going to be really, really good next year. I think he'll stay as well. But his price is such that people aren't going to go there. They're going to think it's overpriced. They're not going to recognize the situation. But I really think that Davis Fogel could be a true, quote-unquote, late-night hammer that is 1% and puts up a possible 40. There's actually a pathway for him to put up a 50 as well. So that's one angle. Ike being the other one.
Do we dare call him the posh play of the day, Walt? Do we dare?
We're close. For a while there, we hit that Josh. You just remember that Josh Hubbard game where he put up like damn near 30 real in the first half? I can't remember who.
Yeah, that's the day I won my seat for the tournament. I had him at like 2%.
So he was the posh play then, and so it kind of expanded to the posh and Josh play. So we're kind of messing with that terminology.
All right.
I remember now that. I remember you won your seat on that game. I'm happy to hear that. He's very close, very close. Definitely.
I gotta send you a Josh Hubbard jersey now. I'll write a note. Yeah.
Oh man, I still, I got my posh St. John's shirt around here. I don't wear it as much, but I have it up in my room, up on the wall. Thank you for that, by the way. So that's one angle. He's very close. Mario St. Suberi at 5'5". They're going to want to play him a lot of minutes. Braden Smith, perhaps to a lesser degree, Colgate Braden Smith at 4'2". It just makes sense to get these guys minutes in a maybe a lower pressure environment. Kennesaw State definitely has the chops, physicality to maybe hang around for a bit, but there's not enough there talent wise to compete with Gonzaga. Let's be honest. I think that there's definitely a need to have exposure to this game in your main. I truly do believe that. Whether that's just paying up at 10-2 for Ike, which, you're going to have to make a tough decision. If you go there, maybe you don't get Boozer. Maybe you have to sacrifice Debansta. Maybe Ike and Acuff together is possible. A lot of different builds you can look to. Or just drop to that second line with a Fogel or, Tyon Grant Foster. I'm kind of saving Tyon Grant Foster. I've been really on this kick with him the last couple of games. Like, hey, they brought him in for this reason, end of the season, tournament time. They're banged up. They really need him. I thought it was going to come against St. Mary's back on the end of February. He did okay. He put up 24, but it wasn't quite the game. It was the Santa Clara game where he put up 32 fantasy points in 28 minutes. So I think as we get to tougher matchups, we'll be able to unleash Tyon Grant Foster. So I'm kind of hoping he doesn't do much here. Maybe his price will drop a little bit more. But if you're uncomfortable paying up for Ike, you're not wanting to pay that price for Fogel, which is fine. I get it. The posh play is a documented winning strategy, but people sometimes still don't believe. I would go with like a St. Superi at 5'5", or down to Braden Smith, or even Adam Miller at 4'3". He's going to have to hit a couple threes to really get over the hump there, but he has been facilitating lately, which is very unlikely. And he has a pathway to, putting up a 5x number here with 20 plus minutes. The only worry here is because they do use him in competitive games, he may only play 15 minutes. So a little bit of nerves there for me. Not playing Innocente at 6K. That's too expensive for him, although he has been good as well. And Worley is banged up. That's the other angle. How many minutes are they actually going to have to play Jalen Worley here? Probably not much. He played 16 in the game against Santa Clara. It sounds pretty likely that he'll play and start. But if he does, I just don't know that we see him play more than 15 to 18 minutes. And if that's the case, that's another 3 to 4 going into Fogel's total, pushing him closer to 30. If Fogel gets 30, it makes me think of Superbad when I say that. I truly think that he puts up a huge number. Maybe doesn't end up quite optimal necessarily, but puts up like a 5 or 6x number. It's a very real possibility. So I'm selling it hard. It's the first, it's kind of a tradition for me to find a sneak play. Usually it's a cheap guy like Trevelyan Queen a couple years ago, 4-7. Last year was Nolan Hodge for UNCW. Remember, nobody was on him. He had the big game. So it's usually a cheap guy, but the cheap guys on this first day, I'm not ready to bestow upon them the honor of Posh and Josh play, but Fogel is very, very close. And he makes a lot of sense at that price point because nobody's going to roster him. So that's kind of my read on that game. Looking at it, I have him at 24 minutes, which puts him just under 4x. But if let's just say he gets 30, we're talking about 35 fantasy points pretty easily. So I like him quite a bit, but I'm not sure if he's going to get that title just yet. But I will make it known if he does, and I'll be tweeting about it before the game or before the slate in the morning. What do you think about this one? I know you like EK for sure. He fits the mold, big man against a lesser program. But what are you doing here?
Yeah, I love the Zags in this matchup. Kennesaw State and Conference USA have found success. It's hard to call it success. They were 10-10 in conference, but they were just in a down Conference USA. They were just more athletic than everybody, right? And they're pretty big. They run a lot of size out there: 6'9", 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", and they use that athleticism to put a lot of pressure on the rim, right? They get up and down the court as fast as they can, 19th in tempo, and they just try to, out athletic other teams, which they can in the Conference USA. If you want to get up and down against Gonzaga, that's not going to be a good recipe for success. They are pretty good at defending the rim. I'll give them that. They're 98th percentile in rim denial. So they do have a little bit of paint protection, but like Graham Ike is a different beast. Somebody sitting there at 6'9" is not enough to like guys on Michigan have trouble guarding Graham Ike, So yeah. He is a great play at 10-2. But I'm with you. I think the secondary pieces on this team, one or two guys is going to really have a big night in this high tempo matchup. If I had to pick one, I would pick Grant Foster. I just think after that 29-minute game and this team's a little banged up, I don't see why few just wouldn't unleash him starting day one in the tournament. If that guy's playing 30 minutes, like he's almost guaranteed for like a 28 fantasy point floor. So, the minutes is the thing that's hard to project out here because how much is MSS going to get or how much is Braden Smith going to get? It's kind of unknown. You don't know what Few's going to do. And he rarely splits it 50-50. It's like usually 25 or 30, 15, 10. But it goes either way. So that's really hard to project out, which makes me only want to play MSS or Braden Smith in the GBP and not in a main. I love your Fogel call. That guy is such a good basketball player. Oh my God. I wish he would played more in the beginning of the season. He's a stud. I even like him there at the 6'5" price too, but my favorite probably would be Ty and Grant Foster. I'm a little more comfortable with Few's minutes. I think he's going to get more towards the high 20s, low 30s minutes. And he has the archetype to absolutely destroy his Kennesaw State team.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep banging that drum too. Like they brought him in. It was kind of, people are like, why aren't they using him? It's just like they are, but it's like they don't need to fully unleash him to this point. Like I think we see you're right, a lot of minutes for him throughout the tournament. And really just the reason why he was brought in is for this run. I truly believe that. So I like it. 6'2" is very cheap for him. I mean, 300 cheaper than Fogel, and it makes a lot of sense there. All right, that takes us to the last game here, which is the 2-seeded Houston Cougars taking on the feel-good story, the 15 seed, the Idaho Vandals, the Potatoes here. It's a 23.5-point spread, total of 138.5. Now I have a myriad of plays on this game. I do like, heard some people talking earlier, well, Idaho's going to hit threes and stay close. Okay. I think the 23.5 is not enough. So that's number one. I think the under 138.5 is strong. And the under 55.5 total points for Idaho, also a play that is in my portfolio at the moment near the top. So perhaps, you are one of these guys that think Idaho's going to drain threes and hang around for a bit. It sounds like some people are down on Houston this year. Okay, I think Houston is as strong as ever. But this is one game where I don't have a ton of interest in Maine, but in turbo alt builds, I think the kind of the deep bench of Houston is actually pretty intriguing. We've seen Chase McCarty, who's down there at 3.5. His minutes have been ramping up. He had a 28 just a few weeks back against Oklahoma State. Mercy Miller is playing a lot more in the backup guard spot. He had a 25 against Arizona. Khalifa Sacco at Dearman Price, his minutes have been kind of ramping up. So it's not for the faint of heart, but I foresee Houston comfortably winning, number one. And number two, I think McCarty, Miller, Sacco, guys like that are really intriguing value plays. That'll be, sub 4% on the full slate and probably still under 10% on the turbo slate. So that's kind of where I'm at with this game. Nobody on the Idaho side. Feel good story. First tournament since, 1990. But man, really tough matchup for them. I don't see it. Anyone you like here?
Yeah, I don't see how they score, Walt. They play mainly through the post. And we know that Houston monsters and doubles the post. And I can't see Idaho post players being great passers out of that double team with Tugler and Sienna coming at him. So it's going to be a lot of turnovers. It's going to be a lot of block shots. I was looking at this a lot, and like the Houston guys are cheap. Like Manny Sharp's only 5'5". Yeah. Uzan is only 5'7". And like Idaho plays drop coverage, so they give up a ton in the mid range. So like it sets up good for Flemings and Uzan. And like Tugler has been, if he doesn't foul, which I don't think he's always a foul risk, but not as much in a game against Idaho. Like if he's getting minutes, his fantasy points per minute is off the chart. So he's 6'2", fits the narrative of big guys versus weaker competition. So I don't hate him there, especially in a slate where forwards are tougher to come by. And like you said, like Mercy Miller and Seiko too. Especially if like Sampson, if any of those guys get 2 fouls, they're coming right out. And he plays Seiko the minutes. And this is a game where he doesn't really have to worry about one of those guys being on the bench. So at 3-2, it's a good play as well. And I will give one play out on the Idaho side. Just Biko Johnson is way too cheap at 4,100. He's the highest usage guy, and he plays over 30 minutes. But like, do you want to play? I think a good rule of thumb in a 16-game slate is just don't play anybody against Houston. So he's tempting, but probably not going to end up on a lot of my teams.
Yeah. Once we get to like, the 2 and 4 game slates where you're obligated to start targeting against Houston, then we do so. But yeah, day one, it's a little bit tough. I did see that price for him. He's definitely a solid candidate to make some rosters, some lineups at that price. Isaiah Brickner had a pretty good tournament, a good Big Sky tournament, but he's priced at 5.9 there. The chatter around what I was hearing is that Brickner and some others would hit threes, and just like, I don't think so. I just don't think that's going to happen. You mentioned, playing in the bigs, Brody Rowberry. I don't think he has the skill set, athleticism to hang with the tougher Houston front court. I expect him to probably be in foul trouble immediately. He has a really bad haircut, by the way. I like the Tugler call out. His offense, this was one of my write-ups during bracket previews. Offensively, he's playing the best of his career to this point. Yes, playing heavy minutes. 3 of his last 5, he's been over 30 minutes, not getting into foul trouble, and he's actually looking to score. He had 20 actual points against Arizona in that close loss, so 41. I think I'd have to go back to last year and check, but I'm pretty certain that was his highest fantasy point total ever. Just phenomenal stuff the way he's playing. We've been waiting for it, and it's finally happening. He's always had the upside. A little uncomfortable at 6'2" still, but it's a good spot against Idaho. But yeah, I think Miller, McCarty, Seiko, like that's a good way to go here. Sharp's always projecting well because he's priced under 6K, but he's so volatile. So I don't know if he'll make my main lineup either, but yeah, all Houston all the way. I don't know how Houston scores under 55.5 total points. Love it. All right, so we're through the slate here. Did it early. Feel pretty good. We're not going to give a core. Don't want to put your out there because you got Mania and everything. But we do have people in the chat there asking about some favorite bets. Don Plays, longtime listener, viewer of the show, has a bet boost. He was for a game. He needs a pair. So is there any, like maybe one or two, best bets that you'd be willing to give out? I know we've kind of talked about it throughout, but, one that you feel pretty strongly about, can be a prop too, but, total side, anything that you willing to give us here before we get out of here.
Yeah, we touched on them a couple times going through the games. I like that TCU Ohio State under. I think that game's going to be really sloppy, especially with that 12:15 tip time. We both really like Wisconsin, especially under a 10 number with like a 9.5 or even -10. I would still bet Wisconsin. Vandy, I like giving up the spread. Let's see what else. Michigan State under, talked about. So those are a few that I really, really like.
Yeah, those are good ones. I would 100% pair it. The Vanderbilt, -11.5. I think they win handily. Wisconsin, if you can find that somewhere under 10, 9.5, it's a slam again at the 10. So we're both in agreement there. I think those are probably two of my favorites. I also just talked about it in the game, but Idaho under 55.5 team total points. I don't do a lot with team totals. But that's one that just really stuck out to me because when I ran it, the first thing through my model is like, they're going to score, there's 49, 50, 51. I just don't see them getting past 55 to 60 points. So under 55.5 total points for Idaho there. And then the Illinois game, it's not a best bet, but it's probably going to be one that ends up on my card because of the stuff going on with Penn's best players. I think Illinois, it's 25.5 on DK. 24.5 is out there, but I unfortunately, because I like Penn a lot, I think they lose by 30 plus. So that would be a good one to also kind of build out. I know a lot of people like to do parlays and stuff like that. So that would be a decent parlay piece to add as well. All right. I think that brings us to the end. Always a pleasure to have you on, Mike. Good stuff, man. When we go late, we usually can talk. I mean, if you've let us, or we didn't have, actual lives, you have a life. I don't really have a life. We talk forever. And, I'm really excited about this tournament. I think we're, going through the brackets and the regions. I think we're going to be having some really gargantuan matchups early this year, Sweet 16, Elite 8. So a pretty damn good tournament, and would love to have you come back on maybe before the Sweet 16 and break down some more matchups. This early time slot, it's not easy, but it's doable, and I'm sure you appreciate it as well. It's a very early morning tomorrow and a long day, but I do appreciate you so much. And why don't you tell people where they can find you, those that are meeting you for the first time on Twitter and all that good stuff before we head out.
Yeah, Walt, appreciate you. Like you said, I could talk hoops with you for 24 straight hours, dude. So always good to chop it up. You can find me on Twitter, Mike Cutri CBB. I've been trying to become a little bit more active on Twitter, posting my thoughts. No longer on Dub Club. I'm kind of taking a step away from a little bit of the gambling, mostly because of the new tax rules. Which has given me a little bit more time to do some other cool stuff. But still obviously love the sport so much that I'm still super involved. So if you have any questions or want to find me, shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'm pretty responsive.
Yes, and just an absolute beast when it comes to props. There was a young inexperienced, maybe immature Walt that was out there playing these PRA props, and you set me aside and talked to me and set me straight, and it changed my life. So I appreciate that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Great show. Big day tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow night to break down the Friday slate there. Adam will be joining me most likely for that one. We'll get Razzle maybe this weekend as well. On the way out the door, please make sure you guys hit like, retweet, repost, and all those interactions throughout the show have helped us a tremendous amount. And if you didn't catch it live, on-demand interactions help as well. We're in a world of social currency. That's the best way that you can help me and the brand. Thanks very much. Remember, we'll get those green screens and window trips. Appreciate you guys. Good luck, and let the madness